China's been an enormous source of growth in the world economy over the last 20 years, but especially in the aftermath of the financial crisis, when the developed world, whether it's U.S., Europe, or Japan, has really been flat on its back, and so China's been a key driver at the margin. But as they tell you in the investment business, past performance is no guarantee of future return. The real story is that China is going to be changing its growth model a lot over the next 5 to 10 years, and will shift from being a producer-driven economy to more of a consumer-driven economy, and that'll be a transformative event on the global economy, especially for growth-starved countries like the United States that need new markets to export into. As China does the transformation from the producer export-led growth model that relies on others to provide its major source of demand to more of a consumer-led model, it will become a source of growth for other countries around the world. And this is part of the long-awaited rebalancing of an unbalanced world. The world became overly reliant on one consumer, the American consumer, to drive aggregate demand around the world. The courtesy of the crisis and the bubbles that have burst leading into the crisis, the American consumer has really not been a factor in the last 5 years and is unlikely to restore its once dynamic state of demand for years to come. And to the extent that China can fill that void, that's a very powerful and important development for the global economy. I think it's a really important and complex and increasingly troubled relationship. There's a lot of sort of historical baggage from both sides that really color this relationship. In the U.S., we've focused a lot on trade frictions, the value of the currency, intellectual property rights, most recently the cyber hacking, cyber terrorism issues. Chinese side, they've certainly very sensitive to criticism from the outside. For over 150 years, they've felt humiliated by the West. I think the West still misses China in terms of its characterization significantly. We've got to address these rather prickly aspects of the relationship before they get out of hand. The politics definitely intersect with the economics. Classic example is all these bills that have been introduced by the U.S. Congress beginning in 2005, aimed at forcing the Chinese to revalue their currency, the renminbi or the yuan, whatever you want to call it. They fit some of the problems that America has created itself by failing to save. We have to import surplus savings from abroad. We run massive current account and multilateral trade deficits. In 2012, we had deficits with 101 different countries, yet we single out China as being the lightning rod for the American worker. And we know we have a labor problem in the U.S., and we have stagnant wages, unacceptably high unemployment, and we want to blame China for that. And yet it's clearly not China's fault. If we were to close down trade with China through currency sanctions, we'd still have deficits with 100 other countries. So there's China's convenient. It's a large deficit of ours, but our problems are more homegrown than made in China, and the politicians certainly want to look the other way in that respect. Well, I'd say the top-down metrics I focus on are twofold. One, the consumption share of the GDP. It's 35% right now, and that's literally half the ratio that we have in the United States. Over the next 5 to 10 years, I'd like to see a shift to convergence in those ratios. The U.S. share has got to come down. The Chinese share has got to go up. And then the services share of the Chinese economy is 43% right now. I think for an economy, the scope and the size and the level of development of China, that number should be in the mid-50s. And if you take that number from 43 to the mid-50s, that in current U.S. dollar terms is, equates to an expansion of about 12 trillion U.S. dollars. Services are increasingly tradable. America is the largest services economy in the world. It's a huge potential bonanza for U.S. services firms to take advantage of, to trade into, to invest into. And we, by focusing on these currency tensions, trade tensions, we run the risk of squandering that opportunity. History shows that most developing economies, at least 3/4 of them, by some metrics even higher, stall out when they hit the so-called middle income threshold of somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 of income per capita. China will hit that, at some point around 2015. But history also shows that the reason economies get ensnared in the middle income trap is because they don't change their model. They stick with the old model that seemingly was so successful in driving early stage development. So it's to avoid the trap, you've got to shift the model, and that's why I'm optimistic that China will be an exception, because they've made a strategic decision. It's encapsulated in the so-called 12th five-year plan, which lays out a number of incentives to transform the growth model from exports and investment-led to more of a consumer-led, services-led model. The challenge is implementation. Will they actually have the courage and the focus to implement all of the measures they've addressed? I'm hopeful that they will, but the jury is out. The evidence is mixed that they've done enough at this point. I would concede that. The fact that the 30-year miracle, producer-led, manufacturing-led, construction-led, was a powerful early-stage development model, but it's not a sustainable model. And so the next China, it goes from manufacturing to services, from external to internal demand, from exports to private consumption, from energy, and resource, carbon-intensive, pollution-choking China to a services-led model where the carbon footprint, the resource input is lower. It's a cleaner, lighter GDP, and it's a China that will grow more slowly because services are much more labor-intensive in terms of generating jobs per unit of output than the old model. So, I think there's a lot to be said in looking to a number of more sustainable characteristics of the next China than just looking back at where China's gone over the last 30 years and extrapolating that into the future.